There are nights that exist purely for celebration, nights that belong to you completely, that the universe constructs specifically around the architecture of your joy, and the Friday that Natasha Adeyemi was promoted to branch manager of First Korean International Bank at the age of 30 was exactly that kind of night. She had earned it with the focused, unhurried determination that characterized everything she did. Climbing from junior teller to senior banker to assistant manager over 6 years of work so precise and so thorough that her superiors had run out of reasons to delay the inevitable. The promotion letter had arrived on a Thursday afternoon, and Natasha had read it twice at her desk with the composed expression she wore at work. Professional, warm, entirely in control, and then gone to the bathroom and done a silent, full-bodied celebration that her reflection had witnessed and approved of. Friday night, therefore, belonged entirely to Natasha. She spent 2 hours getting ready, which was not unusual. Natasha approached getting dressed with the same seriousness she brought to quarterly financial reports, because she understood, with the clarity of a woman who had thought carefully about the world she inhabited, that appearance was a language and she intended to speak it fluently. She was 30 years old, Nigerian-British, with skin the color of dark honey and eyes that catalogued everything around her with a speed and accuracy that occasionally unnerved people who were not prepared for it. She was 5'8", all of it carried with the easy confidence of someone who had made peace with exactly who she was. Tonight she wore a deep emerald green dress, fitted, sophisticated, with a neckline that was interesting without being obvious, and heels that added 3 inches and a particular kind of authority to her stride. Her hair was down, natural and full, and she had done her makeup in the way she reserved for occasions that deserved it. Precise, luminous, the kind of face that makes strangers look twice and keep looking. She wore the gold earrings her mother had given her for her 25th birthday, because her mother had said, "Wear these when something good happens," and something good had happened. She looked at herself in the mirror. "Branch manager," she said, to her reflection, trying the words on. Her reflection looked extremely pleased about this. Club Elysian was in Gangnam, the kind of establishment that occupied that specific category of nightlife that was expensive enough to be selective and well-designed enough to justify it. The music was excellent. Not the relentless, undifferentiated thudding of lesser venues, but something with actual architecture to it. Something you could exist inside rather than simply endure. The lighting was warm and amber and strategic. The bar was the length of an aircraft carrier and staffed by people who understood that making a drink well was a craft worth taking seriously. Natasha's friend group, 5 women, all of them working professionals in Seoul's international community, all of them in various states of delight at the promotion news, had claimed a section near the dance floor and established themselves with the decisive energy of women who had earned a Friday night and intended to use it fully. There were cocktails. There was dancing. There was the particular laughter of people who are genuinely happy for each other, which is rarer and better than any other kind. Natasha danced. She was a good dancer in the way that people are good at things they do purely for themselves. Unselfconscious, joyful, not performing for anyone's approval. She lost herself in it, in the music and the movement and the specific, uncomplicated pleasure of a body that knows what it's doing and is allowed to enjoy it. It was during a pause between songs, one of those brief atmospheric shifts when the DJ was transitioning and the dance floor briefly breathed, that she saw him. He was at the bar. That was the first thing. Not the dance floor, not a table with friends, not engaged in any of the social mechanics of a place like this. Just the bar, with the focused, private relationship with his drink that told a story before you'd heard a single word of it. He was Korean, clearly, strong features, sharp jaw, the kind of face that photographs well, and, she suspected, commanded rooms when he wanted it to. He was dressed expensively, in the subtle way of people who wear money without announcing it. Dark shirt, watch that caught the light once and then didn't need to. He was objectively, extraordinarily handsome. He was also unmistakably in some kind of pain. This was Natasha's particular gift. The thing that her friends called Natasha's radar, and her therapist had called highly developed empathic intelligence, and which Natasha herself called simply paying attention. She read people the way other people read, whether not from any single sign but from the accumulation of small ones. The set of his shoulders. The way his jaw was slightly clenched. The quality of his stillness, which was not the stillness of contentment but the stillness of a person holding something very heavy and trying not to let it show. The speed at which he was drinking, which was not the speed of celebration. Something was wrong with this man. She was certain of it with the completeness she reserved for things she understood rather than merely observed. She should have left it alone. He was a stranger. This was her celebration night. She had friends 10 feet away and a perfectly good cocktail and absolutely no obligation to insert herself into the private suffering of a man she had never met. She walked to the bar. She stood beside him and ordered a water. She was pacing herself, always, and in the 30 seconds it took for the water to arrive, she studied him in her peripheral vision with the discreet intensity of a woman who has turned observation into an art form. Up close, the stress was even more visible. There was something around his eyes. A tightness, a fatigue that went deeper than one bad night. She took her water. She turned to him. And she would spend considerable time afterward examining exactly what sequence of impulses produced this decision. She leaned forward, put one hand briefly and gently on his shoulder, pressed a soft kiss to his cheek, and then pulled back and looked at him directly and said, quietly and with complete sincerity, "Whatever it is, it's going to be okay. I promise." She watched something move across his face. Surprise first, pure, unguarded surprise, the kind that bypasses whatever composed exterior a person maintains. Then something underneath it. Something that arrived in his eyes and stayed there, open and undefended in a way she suspected he was rarely open and undefended. He opened his mouth. She gave him a small smile, warm, genuine, the real one she didn't hand out to everyone, and she walked away. Back to her friends, back to the dance floor, back to her celebration. She did not look back. She did not know his name. She did not know that in approximately 2 weeks, the fact of her would become the primary preoccupation of one of the most powerful men in Seoul. She finished her water, ordered a proper cocktail, and danced until midnight, when her feet staged a diplomatic protest regarding the heels, and she and her friends relocated to a late-night restaurant for jjajangmyeon and the kind of conversation that only happens at 1 in the morning after dancing. She went home. She slept beautifully. She dreamed about her promotion. She did not dream about the man at the bar. Not yet. His name was Kang Jae-won, and he was 35 years old, and he was, depending on who you asked and how much they valued their own safety, either a very successful businessman with diverse holdings across Seoul and 3 other cities, or the head of the Kang organization, which was the polite way that certain newspapers referred to something considerably less legitimate. He was not the kind of man whose name appeared in police reports. He was several layers of legal insulation removed from anything that messy, but he was the kind of man whose phone calls got returned immediately and whose reservations were always available and whose presence in a room changed the texture of it. He had gone to Club Elysian that night because his driver had suggested it when Jae-won had said, with the flat, exhausted honesty of a man who had been sitting in his office for 14 hours processing a crisis of significant proportion, that he needed to be somewhere that was not his office. The crisis was real. A business situation that had been deteriorating for 3 weeks and had reached, that Thursday, a particularly acute point, and Jae-won had been carrying it with the self-contained rigidity of a man who had been carrying difficult things alone for so long that he had forgotten there was any other option. He had not expected to be kissed by a stranger. He had not expected to feel, in the 30 seconds of contact and warmth and the direct, certain kindness of those words, "It's going to be okay, I promise." Something unlock in his chest that he could not entirely explain or name. It was not romantic, exactly. Or not only romantic. It was something more elemental, the feeling of being seen by someone who had no agenda around what they were seeing. She had looked at him across a crowded bar and read something true, and offered something genuine in response, and then walked away without asking for anything. He had turned to watch her go. He had watched her reach her friends, watched her laugh at something one of them said, watched her move back to the dance floor with the free, joyful ease of a woman in her element. He had watched her for perhaps 2 minutes and then made himself stop because staring was not something he did and the sensation of wanting to continue was unfamiliar enough to be worth paying attention to. He had gone home. He had slept, for the first time in 2 weeks, without the crisis sitting on his chest. He had thought about her in the morning. He had thought about her the morning after that. By the end of the first week, Jae-won, a man who solved problems with the systematic, well-resourced efficiency of someone who had been doing it for 20 years, had decided that Natasha, whose name he did not yet know, was a problem he intended to solve. The search for Natasha began with what Jae-won considered a reasonable and proportionate deployment of resources and what his head of security, a phlegmatic man named Do Hyun who had worked for the Kang organization for 11 years and thought he had seen everything, considered a sign that his employer had genuinely lost his mind. "You want me to find a woman?" Do Hyun said slowly, in the tone of a man repeating something back to confirm he has heard it correctly. "A black woman, approximately 30, who was at Club Elysian 2 Fridays ago." That is the description. She was wearing green, Jaiwan added. She was wearing green, emerald green, a dress, and gold earrings. Sir, Do-hyun paused. That is still not a great deal to work with. She kissed me on the cheek, Jaiwan said, and told me everything would be okay. A very long pause. Do-hyun had, in his 11 years with the organization, heard Jaiwan say many things. This was in the top 5 most unexpected. She kissed you, on the cheek, and told you everything would be okay. Yes, and you want to find her because I want to find her, Jaiwan said, in the tone that meant this was not a conversation that required further interrogation. Do-hyun wrote something in his notebook. It may have been find the green dress woman, or it may have been something else entirely. He closed the notebook. I will look into it, he said professionally. The search was, by any objective measure, an adventure. Step 1 was the club itself. Do-hyun's team reviewed the security footage from Club Elysian that evening, which they obtained through means that Do-hyun declined to specify in his written report, and identified Natasha clearly on camera. A tall black woman in an emerald dress who had approached the bar, spoken briefly to Jaiwan, and walked back to a group of 5 women near the dance floor. The footage was good enough to see her face. It was not good enough to identify her. Step 2 was canvassing the club staff. The bartender who had been working that section remembered her. Very beautiful, ordered water first, then something with elderflower, but did not know her name or how to find her. Step 3 was, and Do-hyun presented this in his briefing with the flat professionalism of a man who had learned not to editorially comment on his employer's decisions, returning to Club Elysian every Friday, for 2 weeks, on the operational theory that she had been there once and might return. Jaiwan went himself. This was the part that became, in certain circles, a story that was retold with increasing elaboration and decreasing accuracy over the following months. John Jaiwan, feared and respected and generally considered above the indignities of ordinary human pursuit, dressed himself in civilian clothing, or as civilian as a man of his wardrobe was capable of, and sat at Club Elysian's bar on successive Friday nights nursing drinks and looking, according to multiple witnesses, like a very handsome man who had been given homework he did not know how to complete. His lieutenants heard about it. They said nothing to his face because they valued their continued employment. They said a great deal to each other, in the break room, in lowered voices, with expressions that ranged from confused to openly delighted. He's going to the club every Friday, said one, whose name was Byung-hoon and who was 29 and had perhaps insufficient self-preservation instincts. To find a woman who kissed him on the cheek, confirmed another, named Sungil, who was 31 and knew better but couldn't help himself. A woman he doesn't know. He doesn't even know her name. A reverent pause. She must be extraordinary, Byung-hoon said finally. Or he has completely lost it, Sungil offered. Can't it be both? Could be both. It was both. Natasha, entirely unaware that she had set off an organizational manhunt, was having an excellent 2 weeks. The promotion had come with a new office, corner, glass-walled, with a view of the Mapogu Street below that she found genuinely pleasing, and a new salary that she had received notification of and then sat with for a moment in the way you sit with things that confirm a direction you have been moving in for years. She had redecorated the office immediately, because Natasha understood that spaces reflect intention, and she intended the space to reflect someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She had brought in a small monstera plant, 2 framed prints, and a coffee maker that was considerably better than the communal one in the break room, because she had earned good coffee. Her team, 12 people, ranging from fresh graduates to experienced bankers, had adjusted to her management style with the speed of people who quickly understood that she was both warmer than they expected and more exacting than they had hoped, and that both of these things were going to make them better at their jobs whether they liked it or not. She was fair. She was clear. She remembered everyone's names and a specific detail about each of them that made them feel seen, because she did see them. Seeing people was just what she did. Her friend Zara, who had been at the club that night and had witnessed the bar moment with the Korean stranger, brought it up precisely once. You kissed a random man at the bar and just walked away, Zara said, over lunch, with the expression of someone who had been processing this for 2 weeks and had thoughts. I gave him a cheek kiss and a kind word, Natasha said. He looked like he needed it. You could tell that from across the dance floor. He had his shoulders up around his ears, and he was drinking like someone who needed to forget something specific, Natasha said. It wasn't difficult to read. Most people would have left him alone. Most people don't pay attention, Natasha said simply. Zara looked at her with the fond, slightly exasperated expression she had been deploying in Natasha's direction for 6 years. You are so strange, she said affectionately. Thank you, said Natasha. The news arrived on a Tuesday. Zara called at 7 in the evening, and Natasha could hear something in her voice. A particular elevation, half excitement and half something more careful, before she had said anything of substance. So, Zara said. So, Natasha said. You know my cousin's friend June? Works in Apgujeong. Vaguely. She says. And I need you to prepare yourself. Zara. There is a very powerful, very wealthy, and I want to stress this word, very connected man in Seoul who has been looking for a black woman aged around 30, who kissed him at a club approximately 2 weeks ago. Natasha was quiet for 3 seconds. Connected how? She said. Another careful pause. Connected in the way that means his people have been making inquiries at Club Elysian, and apparently, he has been going there himself on Friday nights, which according to June is extremely out of character because this man does not. Zara. Connected how? He runs things, Natasha. His name is Kong Jaiwan, and he is not someone whose name you say loudly in certain rooms. Natasha sat down on her sofa. She was still in her work clothes, a perfectly tailored navy blazer and trousers she had bought last month. And she sat very precisely on the edge of the sofa cushion, the way she sat when she was processing information that required careful handling. The man from the bar, she said. Apparently. He's a mafia boss. Technically, the preferred term is Zara. Yes, essentially, yes. Natasha pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. She thought about the man at the bar, the expensive clothes, the particular quality of his stillness, the way the bar staff had moved around him slightly differently than they moved around other customers, which she had noted and filed away and not particularly examined at the time. She thought about the warmth she had felt radiating from him under the stress. Something genuinely human under all of it. She thought about the fact that he had been looking for her for 2 weeks. He's not going to find me, she said. Natasha. I work in a bank, Zara. I'm a branch manager, not a public figure. He doesn't know my name. He can't find me. Zara's pause was the particular pause of someone who is aware they are about to say something their friend does not want to hear. June says he has people. Quite a lot of people. Who are quite good at finding things. He's not going to find me, Natasha said again, with slightly less certainty. She was wrong. He found her on a Thursday, not through surveillance or informants or any of the considerable apparatus that Dohayan had deployed across the preceding weeks with frustrating results. He found her through the universe's apparent